unfortunately, SKT had such a cohesive 5-man unit. Even though that's not necessarily how they'd been playing a lot of this tournament, when they did group up, they showed that they absolutely can play that style, and Bang showed his chops after getting picked off a little bit.
Amusing how the scouting report was kind of thrown out. They went for a comp that very much was about kill participation. Everyone's putting shields, very much it's going to be high assists on every number. When you're SKT, when you can play flexible, we've seen protect the comp, we've seen 4-1 split push, we knew they could come back to this strategy, but it's actually been very slow going for them in this game compared to their style and others.
I mean, the thing for me is, yes, the comp was very good and had a lot of insurance built in, but that felt like one major mistake, and that was all over. But to give us their take on that SKT win, let's send it over to Dash and the analysts.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. SKT grabbed the first win of the series, and in decisive fashion there at the end, right? It kind of Baron comes through, and then they close it out cleanly. But up until that point, many openings for Flash Wolves, at least with the early kills going over. Before we get to the gameplay, though, I want to talk about champion select, because, Martin, you were talking about how, hey, showing our hand, that group stage gives SKT that full week of prep to really know how they want to attack champion select and set themselves up for this game. This time around, immediate ban on the Syndra, immediate ban on the Lee Sin. Let's get those early playmakers off the table, and then they draft full late game.
Exactly, like the two picks that were used to really beat, Faker and Peanut around the mid lane when we saw Flash was take down SKT were exactly Syndra and Lee Sin. And you don't need to trade them for anything, like your blue side in this first game, that's why they picked blue side. Ban them, get rid of them, and now already you kind of know, okay, the snowball from Flash Wolves will not be as effective as we saw last time, and it hurts Flash Wolves a lot.
Yeah, but it's also a composition that goes very much so into the late game. Azale, we were talking about backstage, is it catch-22? SKT now gets stronger in the late game, so you can technically beat them early, but if you make one mistake, and that's what we saw, I feel in the mid game, the problem with this comp for Flash Wolves is that they didn't have any dominance on the side lane. So LeBlanc wasn't putting enough pressure. Nautilus got pushed in by the Shen. Technically, LeBlanc could get that, but maybe she just rush pure AP and skip the Negatron cloak to maybe get that silent pressure. It's really hard to evaluate that.
Yeah, it is, and it's always one of the things that has been the biggest strengths of SKT. We talk about why they're so good in the mid game, why their objective control is so good. It's because they always dominate side lane control. They always have control of the wave. So even when Flash Wolves got kills, they weren't able to necessarily get rewarded with a lot of objectives off of that. Whereas SKT wins one fight and they take everything and the game's over.
Sure. I mean, I want to talk about why LeBlanc couldn't do anything in the side lane, because while she 1v1 could push in Faker, the problem is the mid lane. Caitlyn Lulu is such a good combination in these scaling comps because you put Caitlyn mid, she has wave clear, she has long range, she has traps. That actually means she can push in the enemy AD carry mid. So SKT had control mid all the time. If LeBlanc were pushing like past the river, trying to kill Faker 1v1, Peanut, Lulu, whatever, they will just roam up to kill LeBlanc in the side lane, and we suddenly flame Mabel for overextending. So when you lose that mid lane to Caitlyn, you can't actually split push properly. And that stopped Flash Wolves from really snowballing as well.
I do think that Huni's build also kind of plays into that because he's going straight Titanic into a Spirit Visage. That is essentially like the ultimate pushing build against both the Nautilus and the LeBlanc, the two people who would be answering him in the side lanes. So even if you send the LeBlanc over there, he's already itemized for MR. He already has very good wave pushing with the Titanic, and he's going to be able to answer you a lot more easily than normal.
Yeah, and all these points combined made it so that the Flash Wolves were stuck in the mid lane. They couldn't really do much. They had to arrow their way out. But the problem is, if you don't have side lane pressure, it's really easy for SKT to position in a way where arrow hits like minimal damage, or not targets. And they even got a few nice arrows onto Bang, but even then, SKT as a bolster was always positioned nicely. That's why if they win that one fight in the mid game, suddenly it was over.
But looking at the draft, right, SKT comfortable rather to play too late. Flash Wolves, kind of the onus is on them to get things going in the early game. We saw a lot of action across the map very early on. Let's look at that bot lane. You had mentioned in the win that Flash Wolves got, their bot lane had gotten beat. Well, here they are going on the aggressive side.
And I mean, this one was ridiculously close. Almost get a kill on Wolf. The flash forward from Sword Art is probably a bit ambitious, but it was a really close fight.
It's quite unfortunate that he actually flashes into the start of the queue as well. If Betty managed to flash over the enemy AD carry there, over Bang, it would have actually worked out. But the fact is he just Bang, he flashed onto E and Q from the Caitlyn there. The problem is, what this meant was free pickaxe, for the bot lane. And you didn't really see anything happen, but it was this slow mounting pressure in the bottom lane that got SKT for free through the early game. So despite Karsa here going off on like 1 or 2 or 3 kills, it was already kind of nullified. The opportunity cost, if that bot lane actually swung towards Flash Wolves, would have been a very pressured SKT in the early game.
Yeah, absolutely, because that 2v2 still goes in favor of SKT with that pickaxe. Now, of course, Karsa did capitalize, returning there as we saw for the gank, and then kind of using that advantage to push it forward into the game. But then I think that's where we get back to your guys' point around having less tools to start fight. Basically, Flash Wolves now relying on that arrow as their only source of engage. We saw that 13 minutes in. Okay, if Bang makes a small blunder, we can capitalize on the 2 for 0, but that's about all that we get.
Yeah, and now the classic SKT thing is, you know, they make a mistake and they lose 1 or 2 guys. They don't really lose anything else, because at this point here, they've already traded these side lane turrets, you know, 2 for 2 for both teams. So it's kills for Flash Wolves, but then nothing after. They get another arrow on Bang, get another kill. This time they finally get a mid tower for it, but it's very small gold advantages they get against a comp that would just completely outscale them, so the gold barely matters.
And part of the key thing there is Bang realizes his mistake, doesn't waste either summoners. Huni does not ult in on Shen. They're just still pushing out bot. They're accepting that this has gone wrong. They don't commit anymore once they realize the fight is lost.
Yeah.
And that is why you very rarely see SKT with these catastrophe fights.
Well, that was all before 13 minutes, and the gold differential fairly even up into the 20-25 minute mark. Let's look at the 27-minute replay here, brought to you by Asia. This is the 4 for 0 in mid lane that really gives SKT the game.
And at this point here, you know, your scaling comp has already hit the late game, your Caitlyn is really strong, and you haven't lost Baron, which is what basically the other team needs to actually snowball fast enough against you. So now you can start playing